Her Majesty, Queen Elizabeth II, is dead. Long live the King. And I think this segment's going to go on rather long, but I think it's justified given the gravity of the event. I suppose we'll start just by mentioning here the Politics of the Crown video I did a long time ago, because one of the things I've noticed in response is a lot of people don't know anything that the Crown is meant to do and the role she played in her, 7 decades of reign. And also, this death is obviously enormous for the UK and how we see ourselves psychologically.
I mean, one thing that I think people outside of the UK have got to remember is she's old. She was older than almost everyone in this country. So there's almost no one in this country who even vaguely remembers a time before her.
Yes. And also the fact that we've lost our psychological link with the past, with her passing as well. I mean, her first Prime Minister being Winston Churchill. I mean, there's a link there all the way back to the Victorian era.
Yeah.
Living, which is now gone. An institutional connection to the war, which is gone. And also the last living connection to the empire, frankly. Her reign was one of which the entire empire was decolonized and disappeared, with the exemption of Rhodesia, which we were asked to take back for all of 5 minutes to then hand over to Zimbabwe, which rather funny. Anyway, she also molded what the Crown is and what it is meant to be, and that is what this video is about, laying out essentially how she made the Crown what it is and is expected to be in future, which King Charles... So, yeah, the new king is not going to be able to change. So
I think it'd be unwise to change.
Yeah. The UK, for people who don't know, has entered a 10-day mourning period for her death. The funeral will be meant to be held on September the 19th at Westminster Abbey. I'm told before then, for some period, it's being debated now for how long, her coffin will be open in Parliament for people to go down and see. The reason it's being debated about how long they're going to do it is just because how many people will turn up. The longest waiting time when the Queen Mother died was 12 hours to see her coffin. So this obviously will be much bigger. As we speak, there is a royal gun salute taking place in Hyde Park in commemoration, and with that, we shall begin with what happened. So, this is the first post we'll talk about today, being from the royal family, congratulating the fact that Liz Truss had become Prime Minister and had gone to see the Queen, as is tradition, to become Prime Minister, effectively. And one of the things that was noteworthy in this image is the fact that her hands in this image don't look particularly well.
Yeah, they're purple.
People don't know. Yeah, her hands were all purple and the tips of them incredibly white. And within a couple of days, BBC suspended all programming. Because if we go to the next one here, we can see live, Bargain Hunt was on the British Broadcasting Corporation and was suddenly turned off, with the announcement being that the Queen was in ill health and being taken care of. Doctors obviously being concerned about Her Majesty's health. And then the news came that all programming was suspended until 6 p.m. in the next link here. There is not a specific time given for when she died, just in the afternoon. Obviously, what will have likely happened is that she died at some point, or was going to die, and the preparations were made so that the entire Commonwealth could be told, our friends and allies could be told, and the preparations for what is going to come next could also be done.
I mean, the fact that everyone on the BBC got their black ties and suits on implies that they knew.
Yes, it is a plan that has been long since planned.
Yeah.
Those black ties and suits were probably on a rail and have been sat there in plastic coverings for God knows how long for exactly this purpose.
Yeah.
But I suppose if we can get it up, John, the next one here, being the fact that a BBC journalist did accidentally tweet that the Queen was dead before the announcement was made. The reason for this that is said is because a fake account had tweeted it and this person believed it. Don't know about that. But if we go to the next one here, we should be able to see that there's also some fake news that came about at the time. Meghan Markle concerned that the Queen's death may yank her from the spotlight for a few days from the Babylon Bee. And then that actually happened as well. So the news came that Meghan Markle was not travelling to Balmoral with Prince Harry to visit the Queen before the announcement was made.
I don't know why, but like it's traditional that British people make jokes in times of sadness to cope with the humour, and I just can't stop my brain from making dark jokes about Meghan Markle.
Yeah, we don't actually know whether or not it was the Yank who decided this or it was the family that decided she wouldn't come. Either way, it probably was best for both. Yeah. And that was what happened. If we go to the next link here, we can see Calvin Robinson and people like him were doing the expected thing. He made his prayers for the Queen. And then the news came that, yes, she has died. If we go to the next link here, we can see the news from the royal family being that she died peacefully in her Balmoral home this afternoon. The King and Queen consort will remain at Balmoral this evening and will return to London tomorrow. And then if we go to the next one here, we can see the official organs of the British state, presumably have been told this is what's going to happen, made the graphics available, and put them up. This is a bus stop. I don't know where. I believe this is in Sheffield, she says. And all over the country, basically every advertising agency that owns some kind of electronic advertising board switched it over to some message of Her Majesty the Queen has died. If you go to the next image here, we should be able to see in London, as you can see, just all the way down the street.
Yeah.
Different images. Go to the next link here, we can see, of course, the media as well. I'll just reference GB News here. Have changed all their logos and their settings for the days of mourning. All of the official organs of media, obviously doing that is the right thing to do.
Yep.
It was also quite weird. We were sat in Rio's watching the news as it came out. And I did notice, I was speaking to Michael earlier, everyone was watching BBC News, which is a bit strange. You would have thought, given the fact that everyone hates them, but it also felt like the right place to go for her and the news on her. Anyway, if we go to the next link here, we can see a statement from His Majesty the King about the situation. He says, "The death of my beloved mother, Her Majesty the Queen, is a moment of greatest sadness for me and all members of my family. We mourn profoundly the passing of a cherished sovereign and much-loved mother. I know her loss will be deeply felt throughout the country, the realms, and the Commonwealth, and by countless people around the world. During this period of mourning and change, my family and I will be comforted and sustained by our knowledge of the respect and deep affection in which the Queen was so widely held." Which is perfectly fine.
Yeah, that's a good statement.
Good statement. If we go to the next one here, I saw Matthew Goodwin did do a good just summation of the reason why this is so deeply held in the UK right now. For Americans, I did see a lot of British journalists messaging their American friends, just being like, please, this is not like the death of a president. This is far bigger.
Yeah.
Goodwin writes, "The Queen embodied the values that we have come to define these islands and our people. A sense of duty, dignity, humility, gratitude, faith, and belief in the nation. We feel such a loss because Her Majesty was one of us. As the Queen said, grief is the price we pay for love." Go to the next one here. We can see that the news broke out around Buckingham Palace, where a lot of people had gathered. First, apparently, there was silence, and then the people around the palace began singing "God Save the King," which was rather emotional. If we go to the next one here, there is a more personal note to me I found more touching. There was a silence held at a football game in England, and the West Ham fans apparently just spontaneously began singing "God Save the Queen," which is an interesting note. I suppose we'll play that and enjoy it.
That's nice.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Wonderful. If we go to the next image here, we can also see a double rainbow appeared over Buckingham Palace as the news broke that she had died. A lot of people were saying that this was metaphorically, symbolically.
Well, it's certainly auspicious.
Part of the fact, because it was a double rainbow, it's like it's her and Philip, which is very nice. If we go to the next image here, we could see respects paid by the Black Cabs in London. The Black Cabs are very good at this sort of thing. They all, for people listening, line themselves up on the road up to Buckingham Palace just to show a physical show of support. And if we go to the next one here, we can see ITV went down and interviewed some of the cabbies. And this chap in particular broke down crying in the middle of it, saying she was the one constant we had in all our lives, which we no longer have. If we go to the next image, we can see King Charles III. His face was captured as he left, rightly saying here, he looks devastated. And, well, it's up to him to become king. If we go to the next one here, we can also see the Prime Minister's statement was made. Liz Truss, this was not a particularly inspiring statement, to say the least. The weirdest line in here being Queen Elizabeth II was the rock on which modern Britain was built. She gave a speech, the same thing. It wasn't touching, frankly.
I didn't think it was terrible.
I didn't think it was, awful, but it wasn't particularly poetic or romantic or anything
No.
noteworthy. I think it likely will just be forgotten, which is interesting for a number of reasons, mostly because Boris Johnson did a speech that was much better.
Of course it was.
But if you go to the next one here, people also did note that Liz Truss in her youth also was on camera multiple times calling for the abolition of the monarchy, which,
Okay, yeah.
it didn't go down well. But if you go to Boris Johnson, he just did a much better job. He's issued a 3-page speech on this. I've just cut out, as I will with the rest of these speeches, the most important parts, or at least the things I found most important, because of the sake of time. He says in here, "This is our country's saddest day. In the hearts of every one of us, there is an ache at the passing of our queen, a deep and personal sense of loss, far more intense, perhaps, than we expected. She seemed so timeless and so wonderful that I am afraid we had come to believe, like children, that she would just go on and on. This is our country's saddest day because she had a unique and simple power to make us happy. That is why we loved her. That is why we grieve for Elizabeth the Great and longest serving and many ways finest monarch in our history. Though our voices may still be choked with sadness, we can say with confidence the words not heard in this country for more than 7 decades. God save the king." Much better statement. in my opinion.
Yeah. But I mean, he's a much more poetic person than Liz Truss.
Yes. You would have thought they'd have speechwriters, but
Yeah.
he seems to have written this himself. If we go to the next one here, we can see Parliament and parliamentary business has been suspended, obviously. The notes in here from the Telegraph saying, "The House of Commons will sit at noon today for MPs to pay tribute to the Queen in a session due to last until 10 p.m. So that's 10 solid hours. There will also be a rare Saturday sitting where senior MPs will take an oath to King Charles III from 2 p.m., which is the right thing to do, obviously. If you get the next one here, we're just going to enjoy some of the imagery that has come out of this event. This here being Buckingham Palace, in which people have been laying flowers. There are instructions on the Queen's website about what to do if you go to any of her states. The next one here is there should be an evening photo in there if you can, John. But this one here is being Windsor Castle as well, where a rainbow was also seen on the flag, put at half-mast, of course. I suppose if we go to the next one, we can see this is being in the United States. All the American official buildings flew their flags at half-mast, which is obviously very nice. Very moving touch from our friends. And if we now go to the foreigners, I suppose, there are a lot of foreign statements in solidarity. Some of them better than others. This is just the image I was talking about earlier.
Yeah.
This being Buckingham Palace in the evening. People coming down with their umbrellas. Don't know what else to do, I suppose. We'll start off with the French response to Her Majesty's death. This one, I think, actually the most touching.
Right, okay.
This is a love letter, frankly, from President Macron. He writes in here, "She held a special status in France and a special place in the hearts of the French people. No foreign sovereign has climbed the stairs of the Élysée Palace more often than she, who honoured France with 6 state visits and met each of its presidents. For her, French was not merely a relic of the Norman ancestry that persisted in so many customs, but an intimate, cherished language. The Queen of 16 Kingdoms loved France, which loved her back. This evening, the people of the United Kingdom and of the Commonwealth are mourning for their Queen, and the people of France join her in their grief." The Canadians I chose next, just prioritising Kanzuk, of course. Justin Trudeau actually did a good job.
Well, someone wrote that for him. That's
Perhaps. Yeah. He writes in here, "For most Canadians, we have known no other sovereign. Queen Elizabeth II was a constant presence in our lives. Time and again, Her Majesty marked Canada's modern history. Over the course of 70 years and 23 royal tours, Queen Elizabeth II saw this country from coast to coast to coast and was there for all of our major historical milestones. She would proclaim, 'It is good to be home,' when returning to her beloved Canada. She was indeed at home here, and Canadians never ceased to return her affection. Her Majesty vowed to devote her life to the service of the Commonwealth and its people. On behalf of all Canadians, I thank Queen Elizabeth II for honouring this vow and for a lifetime of service. On behalf of the Government of Canada, I express our heartfelt condolences to members of the royal family during this most difficult time." Very good statement.
Nice.
Because the next one, we can see the Australians, who also decided to organise a 96-gun salute immediately in response, which was very touching. The Prime Minister there wrote a statement saying, from her famous first trip to Australia, the only reigning sovereign to ever visit, it was clear Her Majesty held a special place in her heart for Australia. 15 more tours before cheering crowds in every part of our country confirms that a special place she held in ours. Even New Zealand managed to do a good job.
Oh, really?
Jacinda Ardern, who previously has been very critical of the monarchy,
Yeah.
actually managed to do a decent job and come out and announce a period of mourning.
Give a statement in English for once.
That
rather
too.
than native Chinese. Yeah.
If we go to the next link here, we can also see the Americans, who did a very wonderful thing as well. Saying here, the US president ordering all flags on all public buildings throughout America and on its embassies around the world to be flown at half-mast until the Queen's funeral in 10 days' time. Trump was...
Remarkable for Joe Biden.
That is true.
Yeah. Joe, I'm not talking to the BBC because I'm Irish. Biden.
I was quite worried about what on earth he would actually do in response.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's given a significant statement in response, but we'll go to Trump's because, frankly, it's more interesting. Donald Trump came out and said, her leadership and enduring diplomacy secured and advanced alliances with the United States and countries around the world, which is very true. If you go to the next one, please, John, for Trump's speech. One of the things that is amazing about the monarchy and people really undervalue was actually very well pointed out in The Crown, which is that if the Prime Minister and the American president fall out over God knows what reason, that's usually a death sentence for diplomatic relations at that level for any other country.
Yep.
Whereas, because we have the monarchy, the Queen can invite the American president to dinner and make friends and woo him that way.
Yeah.
Which,
Yeah.
I'll be up to Charles. Trump continues, Melina and I will always cherish our time together with the Queen and never forget Her Majesty's gracious friendship, great wisdom, and wonderful sense of humour. What a grand and beautiful lady she was. There was nobody like her. He also goes on to talk about Charles III, saying, who I have gotten to know well, will be a great and wonderful king. He dearly loves the United Kingdom and all that it represents to the world. He will prove to be an inspiration to everyone. Queen Elizabeth has been and will be, from above, very proud of King Charles III.
That's nice.
Bolsonaro somehow outdid this, which is weird because Bolsonaro in Brazil is obviously not part of the Commonwealth. He's not even a, major ally like the United States. Instead, I don't know where this came from. Presumably just deep affection. Gave a beautiful speech saying, when life seems difficult, the brave don't lie down and accept defeat. Instead, they are even more determined to fight for a better future. With those words, Queen Elizabeth II shows why she was not just Queen of the British, but Queen of us all. May God receive her in his infinite goodness and comfort her, family, and the British people. On this sad date for the world, we decree 3 days of official mourning and invite all the Brazilian people to pay tribute to Queen Elizabeth II. God save the Queen. Again, not even just a nice statement. I officially decree 3 days of mourning in Brazil. We even got good messages from someone who is a geopolitical enemy at this point. Obviously, Vladimir Putin issued a statement as well, which managed to do good. He says in here, I wish you courage and perseverance in the face of this heavy irreparable loss. I ask you to convey the words of sincere sympathy and support to all the members of the royal family and all the people of Great Britain. I suppose that's that. That's the responses and the event, which I think are going to go down in history. I suppose we'll see what happens at the funeral and how Charles does as king.
I mean, this is the end of an epoch. Right?
Yes.
This is truly...
The Elizabethan age is over.
Yes.
And we as Elizabethans are also no longer that.
I mean, she was Britain's longest reigning monarch.
The second longest reigning monarch in all of world history. Only being nailed by...
Louis XIV or something.
Who was made king at, 2?
Yeah.
So, entirely
A bit of
fair.
an advantage there.
Yeah. And with this, I mean, I do wonder, we were talking about it in the office yesterday, about the fact, I mean, especially with the connection to Great Britain, whenever you speak to an American or any kind of foreigner who comes here, they rightly observe, and I think most of us observe, the British have never really let go of their empire in a psychological way. We all think of ourselves in that manner still, or at least most of us do. And I think with her death, this may be a turning point in that psychological viewpoint. What do you think?
I think that what Elizabeth's death is showing us is the distinction between a traditional society and a social contract society. There's this there was a thing from like the Irish Times a while ago being like, we don't really understand why Britain's obsessed with their monarchy. You know, it's like living next to a neighbor who loves clowns and, you know, blah blah blah. And it's like, yeah, because this country isn't based on an abstract contract. We're based on sentiments, you know, and it's this how we feel about the country is what keeps it all together. And so
And the sacred aspects of it.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. It's entirely how we feel about it. You know, we feel that things are sacred. We feel things are done the right way. And this is very much, to me, making that distinction. Being like, because when the president in America dies, who cares? Like, who cares? Like, no one cares.
It's nowhere near the same level.
No.
It's a sad moment, and you think, you know, very sorry for the Americans.
Because
but even the Americans get over it.
Because it's all based on a document. You know, it's formal. It's abstract. It's, you know, something that is not a kind of living organism in a way. And that's what I think all of these people are speaking to. All of the world leaders are speaking to when they say kind things.
I mean, there's a real recognition globally. What's kind of sad about all of that, though, is that with her death as well, we're losing that network, that influence, and that years of soft power.
Because it's hard to imagine that Charles is even going to be able to vaguely step into these giant boots, right?
He won't.
No.
I mean, even just on the age basis alone, he's not going to be able to.
But you were saying yesterday there's a kind of magic that she had, and that is gone, and that's true. And so the question is, what's next?
Suppose we'll just end off with talking about some of the best moments, or at least the most appreciated moments that people had about Her Majesty. We'll start off here, just one I saw floating about, which, regardless of politics, everyone can appreciate this photo. If you can make it a bit bigger, please, John. For people listening, it is when she was burying her husband publicly, and she had to sit on her own, separated from her entire family, with a black mask on.
Fucking mask.
Yes. No one knows what these people's opinions are, and that is obviously the triumph of her rule and the status she set herself. But I can't imagine she was actually very happy about any of this.
Oh, no one was.
No. So, even putting up with all their BS for all those years. The next one here is just a wonderful image I saw popping around. This is the Queen firing a rifle that was set up for her. And the best bit just being the chap behind her, just the smile. Yeah, go on, Mum. The next one I saw many Americans and people who have ties to the United States loving was, of course, after 9/11. She broke a 600-year tradition and ordered the musicians to play the Star-Spangled Banner, which very true as well. The next one for many British people most recently being the Paddington Bear sketch, in which they animated Paddington Bear having tea with the Queen, and it just ends off with thank you, Mom, for everything, which is strange because the people who made that, you can imagine they made that with it in mind that she will be dead soon, and we all knew she's old.
Yeah.
And it's nice for her to have lived through that, I suppose. One thing that did stand out to me, though, is just the random stories. I mean, everyone's seen them on TV from various people who have gone to meet the Queen, and everyone's always got a funny story or something, or the story about how they met the Queen. This one's just hilarious, though, and is somewhat personal, I imagine. This is a chap who had been knowing the Queen for a long time, going up with her to Balmoral, and he tells the story of when he and her were out hiking one day, and they ran into two Americans who didn't recognise her. I suppose we'll play and listen to this.
Normally, on these picnic sites, you meet nobody, but there was two hikers coming towards us, and the Queen would always stop and say hello. And it was two Americans on a walking holiday. And it was clear from the moment that we first stopped, they hadn't recognised the Queen, which is fine. And the American gentleman was telling the Queen where he came from, where they were going to next, and where they'd been to in Britain. And I could see it coming, and sure enough, he said to Her Majesty, "And where do you live?" And she said, "Well, I live in London, but I've got a holiday home just the other side of the hills." And he said, "Well, how often have you been coming up here?" "Oh," she said, "I've been coming up here ever since I was a little girl, so over 80 years. And you could see the clogs thinking. He said, well, if you've been coming up here for 80 years, you must have met the Queen. And as quick as a flash says, well, I haven't, but Dick here meets her regularly. So the guy said to me, oh, you've met the Queen, what's she like? And because I was with her a long time and I knew I could pull a leg, I said, oh, she can be very cantankerous at times, but she's got a lovely sense of humour. Anyway, the next thing I knew, this guy comes around, put his arm around my shoulder, and before I could see what was happening, he gets his camera, gives it to the Queen, and says, can you take a picture of the two of us? Anyway, we swapped places, and I took a picture of them with the Queen, and we never let on, and we waved goodbye. And then Her Majesty said to me, I'd love to be a fly on the wall when he shows those photographs to the friends in America, and hopefully someone tells him who I am.
It's just golden.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. I suppose on that note, we'll just end it with a picture of King Charles III. And God Save the King. There is some politics in this, I think is worth mentioning for foreigners.
Yeah.
Right now. Of course, instantly he becomes king. There's no ifs or buts about that. That's how the crown works. But he can resign and have it move on to William. And there's been a lot of chatter within the British public about what they would prefer. And I can't imagine the royal family don't know this.
Yeah.
And so I'm not saying anything will happen, but if something does and Charles decides he doesn't want it and moves on to William, there's a few reasons why, for people wondering. It just, firstly, on popularity alone, polling on what do people think of the royal family. Most recent one on Queen Elizabeth yielded a 75% approval rating from YouGov. Meanwhile, Charles got 42% approval.
To be honest with you, I'm kind of surprised it was that high.
Yes. There are a few reasons. Firstly, on a Christian perspective, his adultery,
Yes.
which is quite incompatible with being a role model.
His romantic life has been gross.
Yep. There's also his inability to shut up, which has become such a thing that even the Crown, when they were making a video about him, their lives, I sent you the clip yesterday, where there's a scene where Her Majesty, when Charles is younger, after he's crowned the Prince of Wales, just explains to him, no one wants to hear your voice. And it's really kind of coarse. And you're like, okay, that's her role. And he looks destroyed by it. But he never took that message on and continued. I mean, just some that are listed on Wikipedia, I'm just going to read. I mean, just him having views on genetically modified crops. There was a political issue during Tony Blair. Climate change, obviously, joining the World Economic Forum constantly. Yeah. He also once hinted at the rejection of the title of Defender of the Faith.
Oh, God, yeah, because he wanted Defender of Faiths, didn't he?
Yes.
It's like, look, mate, you are the head of the Church of England. Act like it.
I don't know what his personal views are.
He's a Blairite, for Christ's sake.
Who knows, I suppose. He also has no children, which is not good.
What?
I'm pretty sure he doesn't have any heirs. Like, if you go down the line, it goes to William instead of to his side.
I thought William was his son.
Oh, sorry. Yes, sorry. Forget. My mistake.
You're thinking of Harry.
Yeah, I'm thinking of Harry. But there's also the fact that he's as old as an American president, as you mentioned yesterday when we were eating. We were eating away and we were like, how old is he? And it's like, oh, he's 70-something. Ooh.
73.
It's as old as an American president. It's ancient.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, kind of.
Wasn't Joe Biden 78?
Yeah,
so he's nearly as old as an American president.
I imagine this used to be fine, but after Elizabeth, there's actually somewhat of an expectation that whoever the monarch is, should be young.
I would prefer William.
Yeah. Whereas William is 40 and has a 66% popularity rating and none of the adultery or any other baggage.
Yeah, actually has a good representative family.
Yeah. So most likely, it seems, from what we've seen from the establishment, it will be King Charles III. However, I thought mentioning all that is wise, because if all of a sudden he does resign the crown and it moves on to William, then that will be the reason why.
It doesn't come out of the blue.
No. Otherwise, Queen is dead, long live the king. If you appreciated that segment from the podcast of the Lotus Eaters, you can go to lotuseaters.com to get access to all the premium content we have on the site, such as the Epoch series, this one on the Anglo-Saxon Game of Thrones. You want to find out what else we're putting out? You can follow us on Getter at lotuseaters_com on Getter. Thank you and goodbye.